Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. I have been doing a lot of ranking videos lately as I do some pre-filming before I have a baby in a couple of weeks. I have ranked my 9-pan palettes, my 12 to 15-pan palettes, my 16-pan palettes, and now it's time to rank every palette in my collection that is larger than 16 pans. Most of these are about 20. There are 8 palettes here that I want to rank, and it's going to be a lot of fun. If you're interested in any of that content, do remember to check the description box because those videos are linked below. And don't forget to like and subscribe before you leave so that you can see all of these videos. If you're new here, hello, my name is Rachel, and I'm a homeschooling stay-at-home mom. I really enjoy playing with eyeshadow. I especially like playing with colorful eyeshadow. This look was filmed as a YouTube short, and I will link that below too. And I upload several videos every week. It's all eyeshadow related. So don't forget to subscribe, and now let's get going with this one. Okay, as previously mentioned in other ranking videos, everything I have is carefully curated. It's all good formula. It's all palettes that I enjoy. And when it comes to ranking them, it pretty much comes down to color story. Whatever I might be in the mood for at the time of filming. If I were to rank these at a different time, I might put them in different order, but right now I'm just looking at what I've got in my lap and I'm thinking, well, I've used this one more than I've used this one, so this one has to go higher, you know? That's basically what it comes down to. All of these are good palettes. If you like the color stories, I recommend every one of them. They are also listed in the description box with links on how to get them if they're still available. Now, let's get started at the very bottom. Again, this is just personal preference. If you disagree, that's okay. We can still be friends, but I'm ranking these based on what I've used lately and kind of what I'm feeling. The very bottom of the stack, and this one truly did surprise me, is the Melt Amor y Mariposas palette. I never expected to have this palette because it's from Melt. It's not a cheap brand. I think it was originally $70. I don't know, but I thought that this color story was super beautiful the very first time I saw it, and I still think so. I don't dip into it as much as I used to, simply because my collection is larger. And that's something I have to consider at this time. It's like, well, what's really getting used more? Because if I love it, but I'm not incorporating it all the time, it has to be lower. By default, it just has to. The color story is lovely. I especially love this top row of greens, and the shimmers are super pretty. Now, I know that this palette had a little bit of mixed reception when it was launched, but I think it's pretty and I like to use it. I also ranked it a little bit lower because these two shades are pretty much the same. They don't do anything different on the eyes, and the rest of the mattes, with the exception of this and obviously the top row of greens, everything else is quite dark. I wish that a couple of these really dark tones over here were replaced with some more mid or light toned mattes. I think that would have given the palette more versatility. You could get less moody looks out of it overall, but it is a really good palette. I like the formula. It's high quality and it's nice. Next up, we have a palette from Glamlight. This is the Michaela palette, the first one that she launched. I do like this palette. I very much like Glamlight's formula. I think it's really easy to work with and you get great color payoff. This palette is lower in the ranking because it has 2 whole rows of neutrals. And I just don't use neutrals that much. And honestly, at this point, I have a couple of neutral palettes in my collection. And those excite me more because I find the colors and the tones that were selected to be a bit more interesting. Also, almost all of these neutrals are warm toned, but all the brights are cool toned. So there's a bit of disparity there. And also, it's very heavy on the purples. I like purple. And purple is a universally flattering color. Pretty much everyone can pull off some shade of purple. But this palette has, I think, 7 purples in mattes and shimmers, and it's just kind of a lot. I feel like this palette should have been pared down, like edited a little bit to make it a little more manageable for the end consumer. But it is nice. I like the colors. I like the brightness of most of it. I like the formula. It's a good palette. Next, we're coming into the Play It Jewel palette from ColourPop. Now, I did customize this one. So what you're seeing here is not an exact stock palette. I don't know that this is available anymore from ColourPop unless you buy it as part of a bundle. Looks like it had a little bit of a mess around it. But anyway, I do like this palette. When I customized it, what I did was I pulled out several of the neutrals, which again is why it's ranking lower, because originally this palette did have many neutrals. I pulled out 6 of them, I think, and I replaced them with shadows from the ColourPop So Very Lovely palette, which I preferred, such as this one and a couple others. But generally, it is a fun palette. I like the formula from ColourPop. It's not my absolute favorite, but it's good. It's pretty reliable, and this palette is quite colorful. You really can dip into it to complement something that you've already done or create a whole new look. It's versatile. It goes light, it goes dark, it's got really pretty shimmers. I like the palette. I should have said this at the beginning. I struggle with large palettes because I can find them a little overwhelming. So these palettes are all good, but the bigger ones can be a little bit much. And that segues me right into the largest palette in my collection, the Naughty palette from BH Cosmetics. I do a series on my channel called The Week Of, where I upload an entire week's worth of eyeshadow videos using only one palette. I did a Week Of Naughty. If you're interested in seeing that, I'll card the playlist above for you. You can see all the Week Of palettes in there. I've got 2 from Udenzai and Naughty, and I'm going to be adding in more. So keep an eye on that playlist if that's something which interests you. This palette is very good, and if you watch my Week Of videos using it, you'll see me go, oh wow, like the quality of these shadows is great. This was BH Cosmetics, really good quality. I understand why people very much enjoyed this palette. I've got it ranked kind of in the middle in today's video because there are palettes in my collection which excite me more. This one's quite large, and so I feel a bit overwhelmed when I open it. I'm like, what should I do? There are just so many choices. And the color story itself is not super inspiring to me, although I've loved every look I do with it. So it's kind of this weird balance of it's really great, and yet it's still not very exciting to me. But I know that it's great, so it had to rank higher. Everything I've done with it has been beautiful. I've had a lot of fun with it. It's just kind of a strange paradox for me, this one is. Anyway, it's beautiful. The quality is very good. I don't use this shade or this shade because they're like a glitter formula. Not really my preference. The color story itself, while the performance is very nice, is just a hint more on the subdued side. And that's also why it's ranking a little bit lower, because generally I prefer brighter, more interesting tones. Now remember, I said that the Naughty palette was a little bit more on the subdued side. This next palette doesn't have subdued shades. It does have a lot of dark shades. That is the Dark Fantasy palette from Beauty Bay. I think that this color story is pretty cool. I think it's interesting, a little unique. I don't see this kind of color story that often. I do like that the palette has a couple very light tones and then several dark deepening tones that work with what you've got. The shimmers are all very pretty, but none of them are black based, which is a personal preference. I like mid to light toned mattes. This one right here, ooh, this purple shimmer, amazing. It's just a cool, moody, dark sort of color story. And when I'm feeling these sorts of tones, I automatically think the Dark Fantasy palette because it plays right into that mood. You can get something a little lighter if you stick with these lighter mattes, but pretty much almost anything you're gonna get is gonna be a very dramatic, sultry, moody kind of look. And when that's the mood I'm in, this is the palette I think of. Crossing to the complete opposite side of that spectrum, we're going to talk about a palette which is extremely light and ethereal and very fairy-like, and that is the Aurora Struck palette from ColourPop. Again, don't love the size. It is a little bit big for my preferences. All of these are, because my preference pretty much stops around 20 pans or smaller. However, this palette speaks to me. I love these colors. I love this color story. It's so very much on theme. It really does make me think of the Aurora Borealis. It's beautiful. Most of it is light toned and fairy-like, ethereal. I think I said those adjectives already. Those are just the words that come to mind when I think of this palette, and also Udenzai shimmers. But anyway, I think that this is lovely. It's not the most incredible quality. It's not even ColourPop's best quality, although I haven't personally encountered any shades in here yet which have been duds for me, so I know it's not ColourPop's mediocre quality either. I think that the palette is quite pretty. I have enjoyed all the looks I've done with it. I like that, again, we have a lot of light tones and then a whole row of deepening shades. And the shimmers are all really pretty. This palette has replaced, in my collection, Lilac You a Lot, It's My Pleasure, and All Amethyst, all from ColourPop. So it kind of got rid of 3 smaller, bulkier palettes and replaced it with one sleeker, slimlined, larger, but still very fun and, for me, inspiring palette. That was number 3. So the number 2 palette is one which probably will not surprise you guys. It's one that I have very much enjoyed for quite a while and usually or always ranks quite high in my ranking videos. This is the Wilderness palette from Beauty Bay. This I grabbed on one of their restocks and I'm so glad I did because I like this palette a lot. This palette is such an interesting blend of colors. Again, totally on theme because it is very wilderness nature kind of themed, but there's still so much variety, and nature has a ton of variety in it. And I think this palette really captured that between cool sky blues and foresty greens and orangey red and grounded shades and earthy shades and sky shades. I think it's beautiful. I love the color story. I'm so inspired by it. I love the formula. Again, we don't have any black based shimmers, so all of these shimmers are ones that I'm happy to reach into. I like that we have an assortment of depth and temperature, some warm, some cool tones, some light, some dark tones. It's just really well done. You can get tons of different looks from this palette. This will probably be featured in my Week of series because it's so much fun, and I mean, the options are almost endless. And finally, in spot number 1, I have to give it to the Serenity palette from Cosmic Brushes. This is new to my collection. I got it over Black Friday, and I think this color story, just like all the other palettes that have ranked high, is very inspiring. Again, we have a range of color, dark, light, warm, cool. This one's not laid out as cohesively as the Wilderness palette, but it's okay because sometimes when it doesn't make sense in the layout, as long as it's not too many shades, it can be a little more challenging for you to go, what really will work together in a cool look? And it depends on your eyeshadow preferences. You know, if you like more monochromatic looks or more cohesive looks, this might not be the layout for you. In fact, some people have been popping out the shadows and reorganizing. But if you like super colorful, wild, more unique, interesting sorts of looks, this might be inspiring to you because it doesn't lay it out for you. You have to think through it, and sometimes it's fun to just throw your brush into a pan and see how the eye look turns out. So I think that this palette's color story is really cool. I love the tones. Many of them are quite unique, like this periwinkle shade over here. This up here is a multi-chrome. It's sort of a blue, purple, pink, gold kind of shift. We do have grounding shades in warmer tones. We have some weird pops of color between the blue and the acid green, and it's just cool. It's just a cool palette. The formula is really good, and I am having a lot of fun having this in my collection as well. I think it's great. And that is all I have in my collection for palettes which are larger than 16 pans. Remember to check the description box for the other videos I've mentioned, or for today's eye look. Like I said, I've been doing reels on Instagram and transferring them over to YouTube Shorts. I love to sing, and what I'm doing is singing a little song while I do an eyeshadow look. So it's a mini tutorial. I'm calling them music and makeup. If you're interested in seeing those, you can find them on my channel Shorts, and that is where you'll find today's eye look linked down below in the description box. Also, you can find a listing of all these palettes that I've mentioned if they're still available. Sorry, I'm a little out of breath because of the pregnancy, and I'm a wee bit scatterbrained today, but that's just how the day's going. It's okay. I appreciate you guys so much for being with me. I hope you enjoyed the video. Remember to like and subscribe. It helps the channel, and I appreciate it, and I hope to see you again very soon in my next video. Have a great day. Bye!